Welcome to the Limitless Ladies Network podcast, where we are limitless in sharing lessons to advocate and drive insightful, empathetic self-care. The Limitless Ladies Network is dedicated to nourishing minds, educating on self-care, and facilitating transformative experiences. Our mission is to guide women to age with grace, cultivate good health, and build meaningful connections to bring happiness into their lives. We strive to empower the ladies of the community so they may successfully advocate for themselves and embrace a journey of holistic well-being. Please note that the information and opinions shared on this podcast are for educational purposes only and are not intended in any way to be used as medical advice. Please seek a medical professional for any health-related matters, and always refer to our full disclosure in our show notes. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Limitless Ladies Network. I am delighted to introduce to you today Christine McNally. She is a shamanic practitioner and teacher in the alternative and complementary medicine, holistic wellness, and spiritual service space. Christine is also the mastermind and author behind her social media page, Daily Shaman, where she has created an online community that is helping thousands of people by creating an inclusive, modern spiritual experience. Today, she's here to demystify us on the modern day shamanism and more specifically the shamanic healing sessions. So welcome to the show, Christine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And boy, shaman sure is a tough word for me to get out today.
That's okay. It took me a while.
So explain to our audience exactly what shamanism is.
So shamanism is a spiritual-based practice that has been around for like millions of years. It's an earth-based practice, and it's practiced worldwide. And it's more commonly referred to as like an indigenous practice. So it comes out of indigenous cultures. It's practices that doesn't have a doctrine. It's the way you have a relationship with the land, and you live in harmony and relationship with the rhythm of the earth, and it just has evolved through the many years, and through modern day there are still very many indigenous practices that have practiced shamanism. They may not call it shamanism. There's that could be a whole nother podcast on like the debate of shamanism and
I'm sure
cultural appropriation, but for the sake of this, it's just, it's a earth-based spiritual practice of living in harmony and relationship with the land and with how you fit in the universe, so to speak.
That. And so you explain that it's a little bit about indigenous people, and that's what I think of when I hear of a shamanic practitioner. It brings me to an instant visual of a campfire with some indigenous people doing, smoke things and other stuff, which is totally intriguing to me. So can you just kind of dig a little deeper maybe into the differences between a shaman and a shamanic practitioner?
Sure. So, a shaman is somebody who is indigenous. They're usually appointed by their community to be the shaman. And the term shaman, again, is a very modern day term that's taken out of context from Asia. So again, that could be another whole debate about the term shaman. Each culture has their own name for it. So we always like to say we refer to it as the shaman archetype. Now, again, there's a lot of debate about, do you call yourself a shaman or not? But normally I don't, because I'm not a shaman, but I'm a shamanic practitioner. Whereas a shamanic practitioner does the same things, but we are trained differently. We don't refer to ourselves as shaman, and we don't have a community pointing to us and calling us the shaman. So a shamanic practitioner is somebody who has trained in the techniques of core shamanism. So, the question is, what is core shamanism? Back in the, I forget, 70s, an anthropologist studied shamanism across the world and across indigenous cultures, and he came up and saw that these cultures all have these same frameworks of techniques of practice, and that he kind of put those together and lumped them into calling them core shamanism. So that's where the shamanic practitioner in the modern day has come out of, is this concept of core shamanism. So the shamanic practitioner is more individual based, still believes in the same principles of that. Everything, it has a spirit. You can talk to everything. You still have a spiritual practice. You kind of practice it out of a context of a culture. So it's not really cultural based. So, and that's where people get confused. It gets fuzzy because, you know, what you think of as a shaman or a shamanic practitioner, that again, it's something that you're sitting around a fire and there's a drum and there's people are smoking, or like there's this and that. And it's, well, yeah, that does happen in some like indigenous cultures, which is still, they can still do it, but they do it in the context of that cultural belief system. So like, but as a shamanic practitioner, we don't necessarily do that. It's very, I find it's when somebody comes for a shamanic healing, it can be very, they realize how normal it is. Like you're not sitting around a campfire. You're like, it's almost like a Reiki session. That's how I can tell people. It's very, very basic. Like it's very, normal. But all the techniques that I've learned that a shaman would use is still happening. It's just, it's not a lot of what people think shamanism is. It's very, very simple.
Yes. And so I actually went through a session with you, and I can say that it was very normal. Normal in a sense that there was not a lot of smoke and mirrors happening, essentially. It was actually via a phone call or a Zoom call, really, right?
Right.
And so that seemed a little odd to me, but you know, energy works everywhere. So
Right.
it made sense that we were able to kind of connect with each other. And it was a very long, in-depth session and just super powerful to me with the information that came out.
Right.
As I was dealing with some major deep-seated traumas and some other things, I felt like I had blockages. So, you know, I think that kind of leads to what some people might go to a shaman for, I guess, is, you
Right.
know, the common issues is like
Right.
blockages.
Right. And so that's a very energetic way of saying it, is blockages. So the terminology that we use is a little bit different to describe blockages. So I have to kind of step back again to go back to the concepts of shamanism. In shamanism, the practitioner believes everything has a spirit, and that to live in right relationship. So the practice of shamanism is a way of life. So as a practitioner, it's not really all about providing healing for people. It's about me as a practitioner living a life of right relationship and in balance and harmony. And then in that living, you're talking to the spiritual world. So like, you know, it's called the altered state. So no, I do not use drugs to get an altered state. I don't use plant medicine to get an altered state. I don't promote that. Again, a very modern way of doing it is drumming and using sound to get you into that we call the altered state of consciousness. Or you can do it in very, very deep meditation. So it looks more like a meditation that I do. That's why when people sit in front of me, they think something's going to happen, and they're like, "Is she sleeping?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. Just journeying." It's called shamanic journeying, and what I'm doing is I'm leaving. Essentially, is like the concept I'm leaving my body spiritually, going into what we call non-ordinary reality, which is the spirit world, and I'm asking for information. I'm either talking to a helping spirit, talking whatever the context is. It can be I could be talking to the tree spirit, right? Those are helping spirits. I could be talking to nature if that is part of the context of a problem that somebody's presenting. I'm receiving wisdom, guidance for either for myself or for the person, or I'm receiving healing, coming back to bring that back through. So everything is animate. So you can talk to everything, and everything you're looking at is in harmony and balance. So that's the goal of shamanism, and you're walking this path is that harmony and balance and that spiritual balance. So it's bringing it forward to shamanic healing. So when somebody comes and asks for a shamanic healing, we talk about blockages. The first thing that tells me that's the disharmony. The person has disharmony in their life. And so where are they not in right relationship? So shamanic healing is not about healing in the sense that's a physical healing. It's a spiritual healing. So really we focus on the spiritual aspect of that's why it's hard to categorize of like where does it fit in like when we call alternative medicine, because we're not healing the physical body. That's a result of healing the soul. So like in shamanic healing, we're healing the soul and bringing the soul back into right relationship with the universe and the earth and where they stand in their placement and on their path. It's a really kind of big thing, right? And everybody has it's different. So it's very individualized. So when someone's like, oh, so-and-so had this, am I going to experience that? I'm like, it's so different. It really depends. It's on the feedback that I get in the journey for that person. So there are commonalities, there are themes, but really it's different for everybody who has a session. And that's why sessions can be 2 hours long, because you're going in there and the helping spirits like, and tell them this, and tell them this, and we're going to fix this. And because it's like, they're excited that this person's here and now receiving this, like coming back into this, what we call right relationship. So I find it very fascinating and very humbling to be part of that spiritual team, to bring that. That's why shamans are called, or shamanic practitioners are called hollow bones. We bring the information back to what we call the ordinary reality, which is the world we live in. And so I'm just one person on that spiritual team that's helping this person come back into right relationship.
Yeah. That is very profound, that you can really have that conversation on a deep level with someone like the spirit world. Essentially, you're connecting, and as you said, we're kind of all one. So you're able to really get into that deep state and elevate yourself to have those conversations with various different spirits. And again, kind of back to my experience with you, was very fascinating because, you're talking to different guides that are there with you, also guides that are there potentially with me, and even members of my family that have passed that came through. They may not say anything, but their presence is known. And you brought that out, which was just fascinating for me to be able to like hear that you made that connection, right? Not even knowing anything about my family necessarily, like you were able to pull out different things about the history within the family, certain people that were not here. I mean, you brought up my grandmother in this case. So it's fascinating to me that you can elevate yourself while you're sitting in front of somebody, or even just across, like we are now in a Zoom call, and that energy kind of comes out.
Right. So everything in the shamanic healing is done in the spiritual world. So that's why we can do it over Zoom. That's why we could do it over phone if you wanted to. I've done it over emails, right? And so like it's because really when you kind of step out of our reality and what we view as the constraints of like, this is how life should be happening. But when you step out of that and open yourself up, saying like, wow, the universe really works in really mysterious ways and is very dynamic. So like, it's a little bit how if people believe in the psychic mediums, right? All your clairs, right? It's really a lot of that is happening too. But like, we are literally, you and I, even though we're doing this right now, we're sitting in the same space in the spiritual world, or you can call it the energetic world. And we're sharing that connection right now. And that's how it all works. And shamanic healing, like you said, it's me talking to your helping spirits, talking to my helping spirits, talking to helping spirits who come and who want to volunteer to help you because they've been with you, talking to your ancestors, talking to your loved ones. Everybody has an opinion and has guidance and wants to be involved. And sometimes you're just like, okay, like you have to tell them like, this is like, we're going to focus on certain things, right? So that's why shamanic healings can be that's why they can be long and in depth, because there's a lot of threads and there's themes. So normally what happens is that the guidance from spirit is what is most needed to be addressed right now, it's the big untie, like the biggest one that will unravel a lot of little things. So we don't necessarily, when somebody comes to me like, oh, I need a soul retrieval, usually I'm like, oh, no, well, we'll see. Like, because you may need one, but that might be part of a bigger unravel that needs to happen. So it's really getting the whole diagnostic from spirit. So there's a lot of things that can happen. So when somebody comes to me and asks for one type of shamanic technique, and can talk about those techniques in a second, okay, I'll be like, yeah, but there might be other things. So you're not coming to me and telling me, well, this is what I want, only this. You're going to get everything. Spirit's going to tell me all the big picture of how it's going to interplay. And maybe you'll get the soul retrieval, but maybe not.
Right, because sometimes what we want is not actually what we need at that moment. So,
Right.
and we are all very unique people. And so it's not going to be the same process. But also, I would imagine there's just so many layers that you have to
Right.
get through for you as the practitioner to kind of
Right.
dig into each of those layers and kind of peel them back one at a time.
That is absolutely right. The layers, because it is like these energetic layers. So, like, I am trained in Reiki, so there's the energy component. Many times they just have me start clearing their energy body first. It's like clear it, and then we just go down. And then as the person starts to relax through that part of it, they start to open up, and it's easier to see. Like, again, it's all soul centered spirit, and I could talk to your spirit, right? Your spirit's present. That's what I'm like in relation with. And then sometimes a person can start to have these visualizations in their own head, because I usually put them in a meditative state because there's nothing else for them to do other than watch me. So I just have them in this meditative state, and they start to experience the same thing that I'm experiencing when they're in that relaxed state, or they start to see pictures or hear things or experience things. And that is them being part of that spiritual experience that I'm involved with as well, because again, they're as intimately as involved as I am in this whole experience. And people will come like, well, I can't do it. I'm like, oh yes, you can. We'll get like, it's having trust and really relaxing the mind and allowing your spirit to kind of rise up so that we can start to look at that the spirit soul level healing.
Right.
Now, some of the different techniques that people might have heard of before in shamanic healing that can happen, and may not always happen in every single one, but the biggest one are soul retrievals. And so soul retrieval is, if you kind of like it to like in psychology, it would be dissociation. Like you dissociate a piece of information from your mind, your consciousness, and then you go to psychotherapy and they bring that piece of information back, and then you have to like reintegrate that and heal it through a psychotherapy process. Soul retrievals are basically the spiritual side of it, right? So a soul retrieval is when the soul fragments. So we all have soul fragmentation. That's part of living life. It happens through traumas, big and small. I've even had it where people have had soul loss from happy experiences because they didn't want to leave the situation. It happens. Like the most common example I could give you is like, let's say you're driving your car and you're in a car accident and you were rear-ended and you kind of went, huh. And for that second, you came out of your body and you're dazed and confused. What a shamanic practitioner would do is get you back into your body, right? Before you have soul loss. What happens is when you're dazed and confused, we don't have shamans anymore in modern day, right? So your piece is still hanging out there, but your physical consciousness is moving on with your day, and you might be dazed and confused for weeks, because in the shamanic sense, that piece of you that came out of your body is still stuck in that time.
It got
In that
left
location.
behind in the car accident, right? So
Right.
like you kept traveling and it was just like left back there.
Yeah, exactly. And so then what a shaman or a shamanic practitioner would do is go do the journey, retrieve the piece of you, the soul piece of you, and bring it back, and then reintegrate it in. And then you would have a little bit of homework to do for the physical integration of those pieces. So that is one way. The more common ways of we could have soul loss without trauma, like having a fright, right? Ooh, but come out of your body and come in. There's the soul losses through the real deep, like sexual trauma, physical trauma, child abuse, domestic violence, anything that is really negative, right? Those relationships. So you can lose pieces of yourself through the family line. So there can be ancestral soul loss, which is, again, that could be a whole nother conversation. You talk about ancestral pieces always come up in shamanic healing, and we touch upon them, but they can be a whole nother thing in itself. Like it's a lot, it's a big work. And ancestral healing really involves the person to be engaged with it. And most people are not ready to do it in the first session. It's me having to guide them on their own in that healing process. Cause it's a lot, but it's a beautiful practice. So going back to soul loss, you can have an essential line. You could have soul loss from a past life. So again, there's no time and space. You can travel back to a person's past lives and they had soul loss maybe 3 lives ago because something happened. Maybe they were murdered. So then you're going to go back and then you're going to retrieve a piece of them, bring them all the way back, and then you can do that. So again, we follow a thread. That's how I see it. I follow a thread back, and you usually try to do 3. 3 is a magical number, so I try to bring 3 pieces back at one time that relate to each other, so you can bring them back. And then there's soul retrieval, and then there's soul integration, which is the other half of it. And the integration piece is we talk about, well, what does the person need to do to integrate these pieces back into their ordinary lives, their physical lives? And that homework integration comes from spirit. And so it's not coming from me. I'm just kind of relaying, okay, this is what they want you to do to help integrate these pieces, these aspects that came back in, that were coming back into you to make you more whole. Because that soul retrievals and integration is probably one of the most common aspects of shamanic healing, but there are other aspects. You can do power retrievals, which is your sovereignty, your personal power. People give their power away all the time, and then we have to call it back. I do it too. Like it's like you got to call it back. Some people can do it themselves. Sometimes you need a little help, so you call the power pieces back. It's like a soul retrieval, but you're calling more of like the aspects of your power and sovereignty back. You can do now I'm like forgetting. You can do depossession, which is and imprints. It's stuff like it's other people's energy that's on you. Yeah. We also do psychopump, which is crossing souls over. Sometimes people have an attachment or a loved one that hasn't crossed over and they're like draining their vital energy. And so it's going in the spirit world and saying, you know what, it's really okay. You could cross over. Just, you might want to leave, like give this person some space. They're going to be fine. And they then can cross over. And I always say you can cross over, but you can always come back to visit. Like we don't really want earthbound spirits hanging around us because they will draw energy and draw your life force energy. And so it drags a person down. And so then we really kind of walk through that psychopumping process with the spirit, who sometimes the person comes in and I'm working on their loved ones rather than them because they're just carrying, so they have these attachments. Could be unfinished business. Again, this could come out in a session and it's just like, you never know where it's going to go. So like,
you've experienced some pretty amazing things, I must say. I mean, from our experience, kind of stepping back to like the soul retrieval pieces and like kind of pulling it all back together. I mean, I remember I was just laying down in my bedroom as we were doing our session, which was super comfortable, and I kind of got into a little bit of a meditative state with you, but I do remember physically feeling, almost like bubbles into the center of my chest, just like kind of like they were coming back. And then later, you were talking about, okay, yeah, there was something with your heart piece and your heart chakra that needed to be worked on. So it's nice that I could feel that there was something energetically happening. And then also to get the feedback after where I had some lessons, and we all have lessons to learn as we're here walking on this planet. But to know specifically what are some of those lessons to work on with the guidance of you and the spirits, essentially the guides that are just telling me and anyone else to work on these specific things, right? Like take in these practices of being mindful each day or journal about these specific things, right? So I think that homework was really beneficial to me for weeks after, where, I started really paying attention to different things and I could kind of almost feel lighter within days to weeks later.
And I call it homework for the integration, but that is really what we also call the ritual and ceremony. So that's another that is a technique in shamanic healing, is ceremonies and rituals. So some people get really turned off if you use the word ceremonies and rituals, because they're like, man, it puts you back into that space of like, what?
Yes, it's that woo woo. We got like,
Right.
what kind of witchiness are you doing with me right
Right. So
now?
so I would say, okay, you got homework, right? And so even though all the healing is done in the spiritual world, you have to we have to anchor it in the physical world. And so by anchoring it, that's why we host rituals and that's why we have ceremonies. They are anchoring in that spiritual energy, that healing into a physical world in a meaningful way. So I call it homework or integration homework. That's the ceremony or the ritual. And then taking that and making it into a practice. So so you've made these mindfulness. It's really a ritual for you that you've made, but the modern day term is practice. You're going to put it into practice, and now you have a new ritual in your daily life, right? But people can come to a shamanic practitioner and ask them that they want a ceremony. But I usually be like, why? Like, there's always a drive, right? They may not know why, but they're feeling it. And it's, again, that's just going through, asking questions, coming back and say, okay, here you go. Like, most people are kind of on the right track, and then they just get stuck because they just need somebody to help them over that little obstacle or gain clarity. And so you can, if they want a ceremony or ritual, it helps them to tailor what it is that they want. And so it's something to think about. And this is, again, from my perspective as a shamanic practitioner. So if you hear about all these ceremonies, like say the full moon ceremony or these rituals, well, if the person comes to that and they hasn't done the work in the spiritual world, what are they sealing in the actual ritual when they're coming into the physical space? So it's kind of, it's two halves, right? So you got to do the spiritual work first, and then you thread it through into the physical world in the physical space by hosting the ceremony. So for me as a practitioner, and this is the way I view it, every time I've gone to somebody who's hosting a ritual or a ceremony, and it's just that, and there's no healing preceding it, it's not, from my perspective, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to change or shift because this is just the ceremonial piece that doesn't relate to any healing that took place first. Because you have to remember, in shamanic sense, everything is spiritual healing, and spiritual or emotions and thoughts need to be in right relationship that drives and manifests whatever it's happening in the physical world. Right. So if you're doing something in the physical world without this first piece, the root of the spirit,
right,
nothing's gonna, so people are like, well, I went to that and nothing happened. Well, it's because,
and some of that, and I totally agree, is that, there has to be some type of essential lesson or homework
right,
that needs to happen, right? So first, I think it's just being aware, right?
right,
Being present and being aware and doing some introspection and reflection on the things that you need to work on, and being willing to be vulnerable and open to making those changes in yourself.
right,
And definitely the healing process is definitely to be vulnerable, right? And
right,
to just kind of
right,
open up, make those conversations, even as hard as they are sometimes.
right,
But then I feel like being able to just kind of practice at home at yourself, or and everyone's big on manifesting, right? With new moon
right,
things. We're kind of sticking with the moon thing, right? Because I
right,
do some of these things. And you do have some people that have gone to a new moon thing, and this whole, not, I don't like to call it a ceremony necessarily, right? But to me, it's energetic. And they want to bring in all these things. But I preface that by saying, look, we all are here. We have soul contracts. We all have traumas. We all have things that we need to work on. And part of that is you need to release certain things. You need to forgive,
right,
particularly yourself and what you've gone through, as well as others, in order to really be able to make space for what you want to bring in. Like
right,
they do go hand in hand. You can't.
right, right, exactly, 100%. And then, I mean, there's also part of the aspect of, I maybe have to do a ceremony or ritual for you for your healing. So that could be like me lighting a candle and paying visual, if that was the guidance I received. So again, it's really whatever the spirit tells me, like what is for the highest good and what's meaningful. I don't have to understand it. You may not have to understand it, but by just believing and having faith and doing it,
Right.
that's what needed. It's really kind of letting the ego mind go and just having that belief that this is how it's going to be. Like, I don't have to understand it, even though I want to, but I don't have to. I have to let it go. And that really in my early days is understanding that piece of letting go, of like not having to, but why, and asking all these questions to my spirit guide. They're just like, just let it go. There's no reason. It just, and sometimes what we do as spiritual healing, we may not have, sometimes we're told not to tell the person, because it puts them back into trauma. So we just have to allude like, oh, we just did this. And they're like, don't put them back into the story, because we just healed it. Because the client might have this a pattern of going back into a story. And so like, it's like really getting them to like, just heal it and move on. But then, so that's like more of the client base, the inner base of client. And other part of shamanic healing that I don't do so much of it. I do a little bit of it. I would love to do more of it. But it's just really time consuming, is working with a person. So a person might call, ask me about that they're having something's wrong with their house or the property and the land, or, land trauma. And going out and bringing the same shamanic healings back to the land. And we call it tending the land, working with the earth, working with nature. Sometimes, for another example, a modern day example would be a realtor trying to sell a place, and the place just doesn't sell. And what happens is you can bring a shamanic practitioner in, and they do a diagnosis of the place. So again, everything has a spirit. So there is an ecosystem of a residence, and then as a shamanic practitioner, I go and I talk to the spirit of the house or spirit of the location and personify it. And they tell me a story, and then everybody comes out, and and it's like you kind of hear the story, and then all of a sudden you start getting the wisdom and the healing of how to bring it back, that location back in the right relationship, right? Or shifting the energy, bring it back into right balance. And then coming back out and saying, okay, in the physical world, this is what needs to happen. It can be something very easy, like, oh, you just need to plant a tree over there. That's all they want. Versus like, oh, there was a lot of deep land trauma here because maybe there was a battle here and this happened, and then it's dealing with the grief. The grieving land takes time, right? Yeah. And so, or you might be bumping up against because we have a lot of Native Americans, and they have lived on this land longer than us. There is still a lot of sacred lands and spaces, and how we have disrupted some of those places. And so some of that energy interplays, right? So that's that's all part of shamanic healing. I've had one person come in wanting to work on themselves, and I'm like, well, it's really driving back to the location that they were living and bringing that back into balance and harmony to help them to get back, because right relationship, they were not in right relationship with where they live because the place wasn't in right relationship. Right. It's really coming back to that concept of what is out of balance and what is in disharmony, and why is it not in right relationship. That's really the core of like that spiritual healing aspect of shamanism.
Yeah. And for us to know and really believe that it's not just what's our physical body and our mental state, right? But actually all the energetic things that we're in contact with on a daily basis, whether it be your house or your environment or the people that you're dealing with on a regular basis. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's very complex and diverse.
Yes.
As I said, I've never had a healing session to be the same. They're all different. I've learned so much, and it's amazing. It's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think it's awesome what you're doing, because I personally found it to be really helpful in my whole everyday, with some lessons that I've been, working to put back into practice and some new ones to do. So, and just learning about the whole process has been amazing. So this is great. Thank you so much for joining me today, Christine. So where can our listeners find you?
They can go to my website at www.daily-shaman.com, or they can go to my Facebook page at Daily Shaman, which is Daily Shaman's one word.
This was a fantastic episode on shamanic practices. So if you like this episode, please be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel, like it, leave a comment for Christine or for anything that you have regarding the topic, because we'd love to hear from you. And please find us on our social channels. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram now. And please sign up for our email newsletter on limitlessladiesnetwork.com as well. We look forward to the next episode.